Thank you very much to all panels for enlightening sharing. My name is Adila. I'm very interested with what Dr. Sivin shared about like how religion actually influence media rather than media influencing religion. But my question is to Dr. Ihsan. So basically in Malaysia, the idea of the representation of religion in media, I shall say, it's quite segregated based on race. So so basically if it's a Malay soap opera, we will only have Muslim characters, Malay Muslim characters in it, and we hardly see any Chinese or Indians in the series. And same goes to if it's Tamil speaking soap opera or perhaps Mandarin, Hokkien and others. So I just want to know, I don't know if you watch TV, but basically, yeah, or movies, but just, kindly share with us how like religion, the diverse religions in Indonesia is being represented in mainstream TV and media in Indonesia. Thank you.
My name is Imran. This French Muslim thinker, Muhammad Arkoun, once used the term the untaught to refer to a kind of situation where Muslims were unable to imagine something because that language is not there, that imagination is not there. So I feel that perhaps one way forward is to reopen the political imagination of the Muslims and see what the future can be like. So I would like to ask the panelists, if given a blank slate today, let's forget about looking at the past as the model of what has worked in the past. If we were to be given a clean slate today to start afresh, what will be the kind of state-religion relations that you aspire towards? Now, it could be several choices. Number one, it could be there's one particular religion and it's imposed on all its citizens. Or number two, it could be a few religions that the state adopts, maybe a kind of version like in Indonesia, 6 official religions. Number three, the state does not have any particular religion. In fact, the state is anti-religion and clamps down on all the religion. Or number four, the state has no particular official religion, but it facilitates the needs of the religious communities. Number five, number six, it can be a different combinations. So what will be the kind of ideal of state-religion relations that you feel is needed as a kind of new imagination? It may be utopian, it may be not conforming to reality, but at least we have that kind of imagination and to keep it alive as a way to look forward to the future instead of just looking back at the past of what had worked in the past, but we are facing with a new context now and we are looking towards the future.
Hi, Assalamualaikum and Selamat Sore. I'm Dini Nurhani. My question is general. Nowadays we have vernacular schools as well as national schools and Methodist schools and whatnot. So my question is it possible for us to have like a standardized school that we have on the national schools to integrate all of races? And also, is it possible for us to have like from the very young age we teach the children all of the religion, like the major religions such as Buddhism, Islam, Christian, and whatnot? So
I'm not really watching television very much in my country, not even news channel. I don't know why, but yeah, especially the this what is it called? Those TV shows that, well, ladies like that very much during soap opera. I don't really like that kind of TV shows, but I'm poor guy. I mean I'm old ones, but I watch I went to theater. I watched some Indonesian movie the latest one, and I think more interesting are the one that was produced by independent movie makers. Like, well, they are not really independent now. Mira Lesmana. The one I like is Kartini, for example. So the portrayal. Have you seen Kartini? Okay. Yeah, our role model for women's emancipation in Indonesia. So there was usually there was a good depictions of the relationship between the Chinese and the others, and there are also I don't remember the title though, but you know our artist LBC, BCL or LBC. Hey, you know that you know better than me. I know. The singer who married to Malay lucky guy, was it Ashraf and Bunga Citra? It was a good. I mean, it's a humor, it's a comedy, but it's a very good portrayal of the relation between ethnic group and I think it was one of the movie that people watch a lot in the country. So that kind of movie is starting being produced more and more now. I also like the movie called what was it? Mencari Hilal, looking for Hilal. You know, it's about old guy, old ulama, accompanied by his young students' son who busy doing business, didn't believe in religion anymore, but they came to a village and then they start talking about religions. Very interesting one, I think. Produced by Mizan, I think. Was it Mizan who produced the movie? I think so. Yeah. So I am sorry to you asked a good question, but you bad person to ask about that stuff. Yeah. But I think I'm really happy with the increasing number of independent movies that being produced now. I was also involved actually in producing very small contributions that we made. We have a book called Carita Orang Basudara. It is the Carita Orang Basudara means stories, brethren, between Muslim and Christians in Maluku. So this is the first and the only edited volumes where Ambonese, Muslim and Christians contribute telling their stories, not about conflict and violence, but about reconciliation and peace initiative they made. And out of that books, a movie was made. The title of the movie was Beta Maluku. Beta Maluku. It was the best movie selected on Festival Film Indonesia 2000 and if not 14 then 15. Okay, Beta Maluku. It was a story about again. Through playing football together, one footballer, Maluku's Ambonese footballer, able to bring all those Muslim and Christian children together, irrespective of their religion and irrespective of the communal conflict that is going on during that time in Ambon. So I contribute with some ideas and. Yeah, so that's also about the movie. Another interesting thing from the popular, well, this is not quite popular because it was made by, independent producers, yeah? But yeah, look at, for example, the documentary is called Provocator Damai. Peace Provocateurs. It was a story about, again, an exchange between one priest and an imam in Maluku to bring together some groups of Muslim and at the same time some group of Christians from Maluku to share together experiences, not of involvement in the conflict, but also but precisely another way around. Their contributions, their attempt, their initiative to do some reconciliations after the conflict. So yeah, thanks for asking the questions. I'm not really, into the Indonesia's soap opera, but there are popular cultures that are being produced, and there are religious issues involved in that. Yeah, even another good question by Imran. I don't know. I wish people are recognized, whatever religion or not religion they believe in. I think one of the definition of religion in ICCPR or in Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not only to freedom to believe and to practice your religion, but also to be free from religion if you choose to be in that position. So that's one thing. So I wish there is no specific recognition into one or other religion. You let the people, you let the citizens choose themselves of what is their religion, and you don't need to put their religious identities on your identity card. It's a bad example, and it's brought out so many political implications. In what's the name of the there is a place where the Ahmadis are now located in Transito in Western Lombok, where they were because of the blasphemy and because of the hate speech, they were like expelled to the other areas, and they are now staying in Transito. They are about 156 families of the Ahmadis. They have been there for like 7 to 8 years now. So they were babies to were born because of their being displaced person in the area, and because they are Ahmadi, they don't have that identity card, and because of that they couldn't list their marriage, because it wasn't like it was practically forbidden back there. And one implication of that is that the baby that was born out of that marriage, there was no certificate of their baby in there. So it was difficult for them to enroll in schools, for example. So that's one example of why it's hard. Why is it not a good practice to have your name, your religion on the identity card? Another example I think that could be thought about to be implemented in countries like us, Indonesia, is it's depend on you to everyone, even free for you to organize yourself and to have even I don't know, any kind of religion that you wish or believe. And if you want, you can list your religion or belief or whatever into a State Department, maybe Internal Affairs Department, not for anything, but to just list your organizations just in case. One more minute. Just in case, because the listing of your organization in the State Department is not only because of that you were there, but there are some implications out of that. One is that the state has to serve you. The other thing is, so this is not only recognitions, but also distributions. What makes Luqman Hakim Zbidi this day is not, it's easy for him, for the state to just enlist the Ahmadi as one other religious group, the name of religion, for example, but the implication that came out of that decision is even more complicated, because you have to to give the money for the education and others. So recognitions come with it, distributions. So I think a more democratic way to do this is like the one that is going on in India or in Australia. You list yourself if you have religion, you list your religion in the state, and it is up to you and your organizations if you could establish and then bring that organization bigger and bigger to some certain platform or number of followers, for example, so you can be given something. So this also that was going on in the U.S. in terms of, for example, political parties or in other democratic countries. So it's more natural and at the same time also democratic. So you don't have to push someone to believe in one in one religion or believe that they don't really committed to that things, but you also gave them some freedom to move. Thank you.
So Imran's question remind me of John Lennon's Imagine. Perhaps we can go to karaoke session after this. Imagine all the people after dinner. But it also reminds me of Professor Mohsen Kadiva, I think when he was here, invited by IRF. When he was in prison, the man who interrogated him, and he was questioned for many hours. One of the questions was if you are given a chance to migrate, perhaps Dr. Faruq remember this, which are the cities that you might choose to stay, in future? If I'm not mistaken, the interrogator mentioned Medina and then Najaf, if I'm mistaken, as a second choice. The third choice is Kuala Lumpur. And the fourth one is Washington. And of course, that time Obama was just elected, and there's no alt-right. Alt-right was already there, but it's not visible. It's now. And so he chose U.S., and he was in exile until now, and I think he's teaching in Duke University. Coming back to John Lennon, Imagine, I wish that, Sing to the World. I wish that we can share this world together. So that will be my answer.
Yes. I think you got to have a secular state, and maybe we need a new religion. This is like one that recognizes all sentient beings, but also I think we're a bit too narcissistic, a bit too focused on humans. What about the rights of nature and animal rights? And I for one think that why can't animals be considered as spiritual beings? Yeah? And nature is a teacher to us. We can learn from nature. This is why I say I like spirituality more than religions. Yeah.
I think that I would imagine a state where it focuses on the flourishing of life, and that would include, we can include the cats and the dogs too, and nature, of course, that would somehow frame itself. Sometimes I wonder whether the word neutral towards religion is the best. Of course, we understand what it means, right? In a sense, but a way that it could be framed, a constitution that could be framed where, I think South Africa is as close you can get some of it, where religious, cultural communities, their life can be affirmed to flourish, okay? If you take a more positive way, because usually constitutions tend to be about what you shouldn't be, right? But the relationship between the state and religion, since that's specific to your question, is that there is no one religion that tops them all. I think, I can't run away from history. Christianity has learned that in a very painful way in the European experience. But having said that, there must be a way in which, while there's a positive relationship between the state and religion, life stances, so on. There must be a way in which the state can be critiqued. And I guess that's the way I would imagine that. In some sense, the state could be interrupted by a critical religion, if I may use that phrase, where it plays a role, a prophetic role as well, not just a pastoral, where in the case of the state could support some religious, cultural, even secular humanists or atheistic groups for their own way of flourishing in their life and helping the common good. Again, I know all these things I'm saying, there's all these assumptions that is coming in that you just can't get out of it. But that would be something that I would think about, in the sense that the state would not just favor one, but it's tricky to, what does it mean to favor all, right? Or at least, yeah, so it's a challenging, it's almost, as I share, you hear the struggle, it's almost hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine when you think of a blank slate, because we just are not, but it's worth, as a thought experiment, to go with that. Yeah, that's my immediate reaction. But I would like to deal with one more question, was by the last one, is about religious education vernacular schools. We hear that all the time, right? Is it true that, no, I'm from a vernacular school, by the way. I'm from a Chinese-speaking school. But of course, the way I think about religious, interreligious relations is shaped more by my family, of my experiences living overseas, as well as living in my community. So again, I think Prof. Faruqi was helpful with thinking about a holistic solution. So I don't really have an answer for that, but I'm just wondering whether it's too simplistic to say abolish the vernacular schools, which is very controversial, and this would necessarily solve it, because there are cases in which countries like Switzerland, there's a certain multilingual, there's something about being multilingual that is powerful as well. So just some comment there. But the religious education part is very tricky. I remember I was in a group with a Buddhist nun and a very secular atheist leader, and he was very strong when the moment we talked about introducing religious education. And I'm just talking about secondary school and university in one of the paper proposals. He was strongly against it. He was strongly, totally no, keep religion out of school. That was his view. And we had a very interesting discussion around that. And it was quite heated. And then when I went home one day, the next day I went to work, I realized that we were neighbors in the same condominium. So it's quite interesting experience to have that quite cold moment. But what I wanted to say is this, that I think we can't run away from some form of religious literacy kind of education. How we do it, I think, is a big question mark. I think there's a real fear of proselytization. Let's not run away from that. It's going to be there. I had an interesting experience in Norway where I expected these very secular countries, or even Germany, where religious education usually is restricted to the church. And that's true. You do get catechism, more theologically related teachings are in the church. But there were textbooks written that, at least in Norway, one of my colleagues in the university was writing textbooks to help people have a basic religious literacy. So there may be something about that we need to revisit. So it's not, in my days, it was like Islamic studies, the ustaz would come, and my Malay Muslim friends would go to the class, and the rest of us were supposed to be moral and go to moral classes. I just wonder, how do you score moral, right? That kind of thing. Like. So maybe it's time for us to revisit that. At the very least, at the university level. I mean, we are supposed to be thinkers at the university. I think Prof. Tajudin, we talked about that. So ideally, in our utopia, maybe.
Okay, thanks. Now we open second round of questions. I'll take 3. Maybe 4, but we'll see the 3 first.
Okay, my name is Isaac. I have 2 questions. Maybe these questions, I would like to direct my questions to Dr. Sivin and Dr. Faizan, because you talked about international framework and also your experience in Scandinavian context of liberal democratic society. So my first question is, on freedom of association and expression intersectional with freedom of religion and belief, because maybe my interest is more on state sanction policy on this thing. So one, in a fully functional, democratic and liberal societies like Scandinavian countries, although it's not perfect, freedom of religion and belief is not just enjoyed by a large majority group of people, by the citizens. It's also enjoyed by an extremist or fundamentalist groups, because it's a free country and then you can express yourself, so on and so forth. So in this case, how do you draw the line? How do you control fundamentalist groups? For example, hate speech, so on and so forth. Because I've asked this question before, but the threshold that the Prof. Shad, if I'm not mistaken, he mentioned that you catch someone, or the police will catch someone when the speech hurt others' feeling. I think that this threshold is a very thin line. So I need more clarifications on this. And then my second question is on multiculturalism, because throughout the discussions as well, some of us mentioned about multiculturalism. So what is multiculturalism actually? Because in Scandinavian countries as well, there's an influx of refugees, so on and so forth. So there's a case in Switzerland where this Arab girl refused to shake hands with her classmates because of her belief. And then we also have cases like in France, whereby there's an issue in schools, whether they need to cater Muslim halal food, kosher, so on and so forth. So what does it mean by multiculturalism? Do we need to cater to all beliefs and religions, or just universal culture that we need to have without specific identification? Thank you.
I have one question to Dr. Sivin. My question is how to reach a middle ground between religious community, especially when it comes to the case when, for example, korban, for Muslim to practice korban, and of course it will offend others, religious community in Hindu communities especially. And at the same time, we heard about it happened on the way around in India, in which Muslim has been prevented from practicing korban. I'm not sure whether it is right or wrong. I'm not sure whether it is really happened there. But if we take both cases, how to handle with this case like this?
Good evening. My name is Arif. My question is general, but I prefer the second and the third speaker to answer it. Those who often reject the ideas of human rights often say that human rights is a creation of the West. It is alien to Southeast Asia. It is alien to the East. It's not Islamic. It cannot conform to our cultures and traditions. My question is that really true? If not, how has it been represented in our traditional oral traditions and past literatures and so on? Has the concept of human rights already exist? I mean, in those oral traditions in the past? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Tim from Singapore. I'm an NGO worker, and as an alternative to religious education, which is what somebody brought up previously, I'd like to tell a short story, very short, about this young boy, about 17, 18 years old, doing IB, International Baccalaureate in Singapore, and he came to my organization, Health Serve, to make soap with Bangladeshi foreign worker. The soap is from hotels, and they recycle it, because after the first, the visitor uses the soap, you can't give it to the next one. So you cut it down, shape it, you dry it, you put it back together again. And they spent about 3 to 4 hours together, and he came back again and again. My question to him was, what do you learn now, or what would you do now that you wouldn't do before this event, this meeting? And his answer was, when I went up to a bus, when I used to go up to a bus, and there are 3 seats around, I would choose the seat where the foreign worker, the Bangladeshi, would not be sitting beside me. That is my first choice. Now, I would choose the seat where the Bangladeshi is sitting because I know he wants to talk to me. Whether I can understand him or not is a different matter. I know he likes to talk to me. So one of the things, my suggestion is do a cross-religious or cross-racial or whatever cultural event or some way in which the different communities can work together for a common goal. Can be something simple, can be something rather short. And I think with these simple steps, you can teach inter-religious or intercultural values without actually opening your mouths, at least initially. Then you can talk about other things as well.
Let's start the
how to distinguish collective religious hatred and freedom of speech or freedom of expression. In 2013, Special Rapporteur of Freedom of Religion at the time, Professor Heiner Bielefeld, has managed to work on this in the workshops in Rabat, and the instrument are here now. It's called Rabat Plan of Action 2013, and you can Google it. In fact, last few weeks, when Mufti Perlis wrote his famous poem Puisi Pagi Jumaat, I managed to interpret his poem according to Rabat Plan of Action, and there are lists of criteria how to distinguish it's a freedom of speech or collective religious hatred. Among others, the first one are the context. So even that he tried to defend himself, this is one case, that he wrote a poem targeting Narendra Modi's administration, but obviously it is out of context, because if he wished to target Narendra Modi and Hindus of Bharatiya Janata Party in India, he should pen it when Najib was, our Prime Minister was there, early April, or perhaps when Narendra Modi was here in Brickfield in 2016, in November, I think. So there is an instrument called Rabat Plan of Action. Do Google, I won't take much time about it. But I've done a lot of research on hak asasi manusia desa, or local human rights, or traditional human rights, whatever. I mean, there are a lot of terms that have been used here. Perhaps the one that asked the question can Google in YouTube, human rights lessons from Malay proverbs. That was done under my research grant. And next week, I've written something for Media Corp Singapore, human rights in Malay Pantun. And also, if we look into the Lontara Wajo, there's a lot of Lontaras from Makassar, the 18th century, 17th century, there are a lot of concept of human rights there. But of course, it needs a lot of extensive works to unearth all this heritage here of our ancestors. And human rights are there. This so-called hak asasi manusia desa. I think Prasasti Talang Tuo, the inscribed stone of Talang Tuo, how founder Sri Jainasa is a craft this inscribed stone in 684 AD, yeah, when he founded the kingdom of Sriwijaya or Kerajaan Melayu at the time in Palembang. There's a clear human rights, although that is not just, it's not like UDHR 1948, but it's something, yeah, because he founded this kingdom and he asked in royal decree to make an orchard and let all the human beings and animals, yeah, including birds, yeah, cats and dogs, and also women's, yeah, and slaves to enjoy the fruits there. This is, I think, a very interesting evidence that human rights are already there. Yeah. In fact, according to freedom of religion, if we discuss freedom of religion, many people tend to forget that we have in Malaysia Kitab Tafsir Nurul Ihsan, written in 1934 by this Qadi from Jitra, Muhammad Said Omar. He is the great-grandfather of Mahfuz Omar, the vice president of, no, he's no longer vice president of PAS. He's now in Amanah, right? Mahfuz. 1934, yeah, 1934, written by Muhammad Said Omar. This is before World War II. From Malaysia, this is the only complete tafsir, Malay exegesis, and for the La Ikraha Fid Din, he confidently stressed that La Ikraha Fid Din means La Ikraha Fid Din is freedom of religion for all, and changing or converting from Islam to another religion is actually a personal sin, and there's no hudud for the particular sin, yeah, and this is, I think, in alliance with what these contemporary thinkers we have, like Muhammad Talbi using Maqasid Sharia, or Mohsen Kadivar using the Ahlul Bait framework. This is very aligned with. But unfortunately, Kitab Tafsir Nurul Ihsan, even though it's been transcribed by Ikim, I think, and still been read in many mosques in Kedah and Perak, northern Perak, but unfortunately, we did not hold this idea of adat bersendi hukum, hukum bersendi kitabullah. You know, when hukum bersendi kitabullah means it's Quranic inspired. It's not fiqh oriented. It should be Quranic inspired. Yeah, the first line ada bersendi hukum, yes, it's fiqh oriented. But hukum bersendi kitabullah means Quranic inspired. But we fail to understand this maxim from our ancestors. Yeah, thank you.
I think one of my favorite quotes by a Western IR thinker about the universality of human rights: it's better to be human rights imperialist than a local fascist. The thing is, the Western notion of human rights, why were they designed? They were a critique of the West, of the horrors of World War II. So it's self-critique by the West. And are they applicable to everybody? Yes, because what is universal is human wrongs. How do we right those wrongs? It doesn't matter where human rights come from. What matters is how they're applied and what effects they have on people. And those effects are emancipation and empowerment. Who is helped by human rights? It's women, children, and minorities. Pragmatically, that's human rights can help people like that. So why do we have to ask, where do they come from? As if somehow this invalidates them. Let's see what they can do, what their consequences are when they're put into practice. And of course, there's similar ideas and notions in all kind of cultures. But I mean, just because they made in the West, or they were actually formulated by multicultural and multi-faith people in the 1948 anyway. But I think they're useful. Yeah?
On hate speech, I think for religious communities, right, you can't run away from they are presenting truth claims. The moment you go into truth claims, you will talk about what I believe is right and what I believe is wrong. And sometimes what I believe is right, when I say it out, it may hurt your feelings. I think that is not hate speech, right? I wouldn't go there necessarily. If not, there'll be a lot of problems in our classes when I'm telling students they're wrong. So I think we are not going there. But this idea of inciting hatred, I think when I think about it in Malaysia, for example, there were many instances, even visibly in public, where it was incitement towards certain actions. Whether now the debate is whether it's explicit, go and stand in front of this church and, you know, or stand in front of this religious place of worship, mosque, and do something. I think the moment you head there, it is much more specific than just about feelings, because I think feelings is a bit tricky when we over-psychologize things. But I'm not a legal expert on this. I'm just speaking as a religious person, that this is what I'm thinking about. Because like for some religious communities, they would have very strong views on homosexuality, for example. So if they have an opinion about this, does that mean it's hate speech? Or they are saying that all of you need to do something to this group of people, and clearly it is harming them physically, emotionally, mentally, and all that. I think that's where this whole idea of hate speech, especially for religious communities, they need to reflect on, apart from the legal instruments that Rabat and others, I think, because, yeah, so that's just my immediate reaction towards that. The tricky thing about multiculturalism, and of course now there's this discussion of interculturalism, you know, give it to academics, they'll come up with 101 things to help us think clearly, whatever that means. But the nice thing about inter is that it emphasizes the interrelationships, right? Multi just states the, I mean, on the surface. I know airports are very interesting places, because airports is where I find that we are in this liminal space where suddenly all of us are basically travelers. And then here's a space where nowadays in airports you have places of worship, or at least a space for people to practice their prayers for the Muslims. So could that be a model to some extent? So it's kind of a tension between something that is quite neutral, open, and yet like in the Norwegian university that I was part of, I was quite surprised that they had this prayer room. Most of the times the Christians would use it because they're the majority, but it was a prayer room that was actually open for other religious groups. There was possibilities of rearranging the religious symbolisms. So I think that was their attempt of being inclusive. So I guess this is the process in which the dynamics of negotiating what it means to live together and coexist and respecting each other is played out. And multiculturalism or interculturalism is meant to name that reality. In some sense, we do it quite well in Malaysia. I'm not talking about at the top level. We do it in the way we speak, in the way we have fun together, watch soap operas or whatever. This is where we get some of that. So that's just some thoughts there. The middle ground between religious communities, you know, especially religious practices. I was part of Toastmasters, right? Nothing to do with drinking, by the way. Toastmasters is like public speaking, right? And I noticed that when I was in the early days of joining Toastmasters, there was a sense that we chose to eat vegetarian, you know, for the sake of those who don't eat meat. So there was an act from within to decide how to do that. And that was self-initiated, it was not imposed, okay? And it's okay, we can live with that. Now, but when it comes to this, of course, there are complaints. So first of all, we have to deal with those who, I'm talking about Malaysia, I don't know enough about India to comment, like these religious practices for the Muslims, and now for the Hindus, I mean, do you do it purposely in front of them? I guess you wouldn't want to do that, right? So how can we negotiate the public space? Because we're doing it in a public space, maybe that's the thing. Or in schools, for example, that was where some controversies erupted if I'm not mistaken. So this is public space. So is that the appropriate place for this to happen? So these are questions that each religious community would want to deal with. Now, from a Christian point of view, it's very interesting when we had someone complain about a cross just some time ago, all right? So it's kind of public space. It may hurt someone's feelings, but yet it is integral to the Christian symbolism. So this is where people like us involved in interreligious work try to create another space for people to sit down and talk and work through that. That's the best I can go for so-called middle ground. And sometimes I wonder whether middle ground is the best metaphor. I'm sorry, I like to talk about terms. Or is it the common space, the ground, the common ground that we are occupying? And implicit in that is the question of common good, all right? But that's a more different discussion. Yep.
There's a comment just now about religious education can be more, maybe better doing informal rather than formal. Anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think we should put out religion out of school also. Yeah, I was once advocate for Sastra Islam. Now I come to this extent, because you know what? Unfortunately, religion. When we have religion and we talk about kebebasan beragama, for the Malays, since Kitab Pengetahuan Bahasa was written by Raja Ali Haji, it's very influential lexicon, lexicography, dictionary for the Malays. Kebebasan have been interpreted with a very negative connotation. And the example for kebebasan is like rape, robbery, and others, yeah, and pukul orang. And because of this, yeah, we have this very negative connotation of kebebasan beragama, and because of this, it's lead to another point that when we talk about kebebasan beragama or freedom of religion, people tend to see that, oh, does it mean that your religion and my religion is now same? Yeah, although that. Freedom of religion is not about religion itself, but it's about the practitioners, yeah, about people who actually professing the religions or the faith. This is one issue that I think, because it's in our mentality, and for this reason, I think we should keep it out. It reminds me of like 2-3 days ago, this one boy came to me to sign an autograph, a book, and then I asked him, where are you from? I'm from Sekolah Agama, this and that. They said, oh, Sekolah Agama, ada kena pukul ke? This is I mean, it's like in my mind, oh, ada sekolah agama, oh, teruknya, ada kena pukul ke? So it's like, you know, because of that, because of piece of violence whatsoever, pukul, liwat, and many things others. So I think let's keep religion even out from schools. Yeah, yeah, we can learn from IRF. Yeah, like this. Yeah.
Okay. Let me take this opportunity to thank everyone and also the panelists. It was a fruitful discussion, and I hope we can do this sometime in the future. Again in future. Some housekeeping rules. Tomorrow breakfast is at 7:30 at Veranda, and we'll have tomorrow's session starts at 9 o'clock at Sivin Kit. If you think this forum is interesting, we have another one tomorrow. A bit more political lineup. We have Yang Berhormat Liu Chintong, Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, and Prof. Naraini Ohman, and the forum is on Islam and politics, the challenge towards a progressive Malaysian Muslim society, and we moderated by Ihsan. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank everyone again and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.